My name is Kenneth Lawson. I'm a faculty member here at the University of Hawaii Law School, William S. Richardson School of Law. I'm also the co-director of the Hawaii Innocence Project. So I practiced criminal law in Cincinnati, Ohio for 18 years prior to moving to Hawaii. I moved here in 2008, and so I had a special interest. A lot of cases that I did in Cincinnati, I represented a lot of high-profile athletes. I represented Deion Sanders and a couple other high-profile athletes that got in criminal trouble. But I was also at the center of our riots, the ones that we saw like in Ferguson. I represented numerous people that had been, or family members who had been killed by the Cincinnati police. These individuals had been unarmed and had been unjustifiably killed. So I did a lot of civil rights police misconduct cases. And we had riots in the city of Cincinnati, much like we saw in Ferguson, Missouri, and in New York over the last couple of years. And so my interest, Civil Beat contacted me when I started teaching criminal law here at the University of Hawaii Law School to discuss police misconduct here in Hawaii, and it's been a special interest of mine. And I was surprised when I got here, not only the absence of police training, but the large-scale police misconduct that went unabated. You know, we saw videotapes of police officers beating their girlfriends and wives and not being charged with crimes, and in fact being excused. We see the police chief under investigation for stealing the mailbox, along with his wife under federal investigation. And I guess the issue that really disturbs me is how police have been given powers to protect and serve, but they abuse those powers to such an extent. And what bothers me is that no one seems to fight back. And people only do to you what you allow them to do to you. And so my special interest has been police misconduct. I also do a lot of work in the Innocence Project. Again, I'm the co-director of the Innocence Project. And we deal with anybody that's been convicted in Hawaii who's factually and actually innocent and is serving a prison sentence for a crime they did not do. Since 1993, since the advent of DNA, there have been 333 exonerations where we know that through DNA that 333 individuals have been innocent but have been in prison for crimes they did not commit. So people being incarcerated for wrongful conviction and who are factually innocent does exist. It exists here in Hawaii, and that's another cause that I fight for. But as far as getting back to the police misconduct, you know, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this area here in the state of Hawaii. There needs to be a Citizens Review Complaint Authority, a review panel of individuals who can sit back and review police misconduct complaints filed by citizens to determine whether or not the police have violated somebody's rights and whether or not there should be discipline. As long as the police aren't being disciplined for violating individuals' civil rights, why should they stop? Why should they stop? And so Civil Beat has given at least an avenue of where stories such as these can be printed and people can learn more about police misconduct, because most people don't believe it exists. Most people believe, hey, you know what, police officers are here to help us. They're here to protect us. And you shouldn't say anything negative about a police officer because they're good people. And most of them are. But you have a lot of bad apples within this whole general bunch of good police officers that give the entire force a bad name. But when the chief of police is doing things that are controversial, when the chief of police is being investigated by the FBI, when the chief of police is under federal investigation by federal prosecutors, then those under him, why should they fall in line? I mean, if your police chief is not playing by the rules, why should any subordinates play by the rules? And what are the rules? Hawaii doesn't seem to have any, right? I mean, police officers, again, commit crimes and they stay on the job. They engage in police misconduct. They stay on the job. They beat up citizens. They stay on the job. They beat up their girlfriends. They stay on videotape. They stay on the job. So the question becomes, what policies and practices do we need to put into force here in our state to allow us to have a better police-community relations? Again, because the community needs the police as well as the police needs the community. But there has to be some give and take, and there has to be discipline for officers to get out of line. Since I've been here, since 2008, I've seen individuals shot and killed by the police that were unarmed. They may have been leaving the scene of an accident or leaving police custody. One was down in Waikiki. Death in custody from positional asphyxiation, where the police have surrounded somebody who may be mentally disabled or suffering from some type of drug-induced psychosis. They're unarmed. The police officers somehow put them in a position and physically hog-tie them, or at least put them in a position to where they suffocate and die. And so you see these types of use of excessive force, death in custody. Then when you see it happen in the mainland, you see people protesting, you see people getting up in arms about the excessive use of force. When it happens here, it's almost like no one says anything. When you look at the Didi case, there you have an agent that comes from Virginia, wherever he came from, here carrying a gun, out drinking in a bar, and walks in McDonald's and kills an unarmed citizen. And somehow police are given a pass when it comes to death in custody. So, those types of police misconduct cases bother me because it's excessive force and they involve death in custody. And a lot of it doesn't have to happen, but it goes back to training or lack thereof. And if you're not training young, we're the only state that doesn't have any mandatory training criteria to where there's some type of training and then retraining. Do we keep statistics on how many times an officer pulls his weapon on a citizen? Because if we know that officers are pulling weapons at, let's say, traffic stops, an officer gets scared, he pulls out his weapon. If each time that officer has to report whenever he or she pulls out their weapon, maybe the supervisor can look at it and say, you know what, you seem to be pulling out your weapon entirely way more than any other officer on our force. Maybe you need to be retrained before you end up shooting somebody accidentally. Maybe you need to be retrained before somebody scares you from a sudden movement and then you just pull the trigger. And it's the lack of training that leads to a lot of these abuses. It's not as if we have a lot of officers who are going out intentionally saying, I want to violate somebody's constitutional rights today. This is what I'm going to do. A lot of it is because they don't know how to respect those rights through the training, or lack of training they receive. One of the big questions that I had is why there's so much passivity when it comes to police misconduct. Why? When we see these videos now all the time, everything is on video now, and you look at the news from the mainland, you see videos of police mistreating somebody in custody, and right after that you see protests, you see the people up in arms, etc. And I was shocked that after all the police misconduct that occurs here, there's no uprising, there's no protest, there's no, the students, there's just none of that here. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of people don't want to believe that this conduct occurs, or they want to believe it's an isolated incident. What I like about Civil Beat is it will continuously report these incidents that other news agencies may not report or do not want to report. And the more circulation that Civil Beat gets, the more people that start reading Civil Beat, the more that people start seeing, this police misconduct, it's not just an isolated incident. This is a pattern and practice of some severe deprivations of constitutional rights being done by our police force that's here to protect us. When they start seeing that, then maybe we'll start seeing people rise up to the level where pressure is put on legislatures to say, hey, you need to change something. That there needs to be changes made at a state level on down in how we police our communities, and maybe different programs. And we've seen that over the last year with Civil Beat and with a couple of legislatures here that have been, I think Senator Espero has been very, very active in trying to change the police culture here and improve police community relations. But he can't do it alone. And he won't have to. The more the Civil Beat gets out there and continues to do stories like it has been over the last couple of years on police misconduct, the more the public will become aware of it. The more the public becomes aware of it, the more that they can lobby the legislature to start making changes that will have a positive effect. Because good policing benefits everybody.